Hello everyone and welcome back to my Warhammer 40k guides. I am Brady and today I will be going over something for newer players and I will be covering the weaponry of the Imperium. It was requested by someone the other day that I explain what the weapons of the Imperium are used for, because in my earlier videos I talked about how you might want to upgrade your guys but didn't really specify what the weapons you should give them and why you'd give them those weapons. So today we will be covering the weapons of the Imperium. This includes any army or unit that has the faction keyword Imperium. I might miss a couple of sub-faction specific weaponry, but you should still be able to get the gist of what they do because they will most likely be similar to another weapon and you could just compare it to that one. So without any more delay, let's start out with guns. In 40k, guns are the strongest weapons because they have good range and can hit your opponent from far away. The longer range the weapon, the better, because you'll get more targets and have better target prioritization, which is something I will touch on in another video. Let's first start with a couple of terms you may not understand. First, we have anti-tank. An anti-tank weapon is a weapon with a high strength and usually a high AP value, since most vehicles have high toughness and good armor saves. The second term is anti-infantry, which talks about a mid-strength weapon that usually has a -1 AP or more, or no AP at all. The third term I'm going to use is mid-damage weaponry. There is probably a better term to use, but this is what I'm going to use for now. What I mean by mid-damage is a weapon that is kind of a halfway point between anti-infantry and anti-tank, so I can't really group them into either, so they get their own term. The last term is anti-horde. These are weapons that have no AP but lots of shots, so they can kill hordes of infantry that don't have the best saves like orcs or guardsmen. So with that said, let's dive into the ranged weapons of the Imperium. First we have the bolt pistol. Not very good because of its 12-inch range. You don't really want to be relying on regular pistols to kill anything. They might chip off a wound or two from some light infantry units, but other than that, pistols aren't really great, other than the fact you can shoot them while in close combat. Las guns. These are the rifles that conscripts and guardsmen are equipped with. They aren't very good due to their low strength and no AP, so for the most part these guns aren't that great for killing anything except maybe other conscripts or guardsmen. Bolt guns. Space Marine's version of the las gun. It has a higher strength than the las gun with a strength of 4 instead of 3, which means it will wound most infantry in the game on 4s, which isn't bad. It's not the best, but not bad. Kind of like the las gun, bolt guns aren't really going to win the game for you. They're okay at doing a wound here and there to some infantry, but with low-ish strength and no AP, you can't really call this weapon an anti-tank or an anti-infantry. They are, however, decent at being anti-horde weapons, but there are other weapons you will have access to that do that job much better. Now let's get into the cool stuff. Plasma guns. As of right now, these are the go-to special weapon to upgrade your guys with. It has two profiles. The first profile is not overcharged, and it is a good anti-infantry weapon. With a strength of 7, it is wounding most infantry in the game on 3s, which is a 2 out of 3 chance or 66% chance to wound. It has a -3 AP, meaning Space Marines will only get a 6-up save if wounded. Being rapid fire, you can also get 2 shots in at half range, making it even more devastating. The other profile is a mid-damage weapon because it goes up to strength 8, which means it will wound most infantry in the game on 2+, which is the equivalent to an 84% chance to wound. And it will also wound vehicles on a 3+, and does 2 damage instead of just 1. So it's a great Terminator or bike killer. And again, the -3 AP is pretty brutal. The problem with overcharging it though is that if you roll a 1 when trying to hit, your model is slain. That problem can be solved by having a character that allows rerolls of 1s to be near that squad so they can reroll those 1s and hopefully not reroll it into another 1. Melty Guns. In 7th edition, these guns were the way to go since if you wounded a vehicle, you usually made it explode. But the same can't be said about Meltas in 8th. They have the shortest range of all the heavy and special weapons you have access to, other than a flamer, meaning you have to get close to your opponent to use them, which is never a good thing. They are meant to be anti-tank, since when they wound something at half range, you can roll 2 dice for damage and pick the highest roll to be your result. Meaning on average, every Melta wound at 6 inches will cause 4 wounds. It's good, but kind of situational since you have to get close to the vehicle, meaning you have to spend points on a transport to transport your guys with the Meltas so that they can go shoot something. And that's too many points dedicated to just trying to use a Melta when you could have just given your guys longer range weapons that do the same thing. You can always equip them on the jump pack units and deep strike them in range to use them, but other than that, I wouldn't really use Meltas at all this edition on regular troops, because the range is so short and there are just other weapons that do its job better. Speaking of a gun that does the Melta's job better, the Las Cannon, the new go-to weapon of choice for anti-tank. The Las Cannon has one of the highest base strengths in the game with a strength of 9, meaning it wounds almost every vehicle and monster in the game on 3s, at a 48-inch range, making it one of the most reliable anti-tank guns the Imperium has to offer. It also has another component needed to qualify as anti-tank, and that's multi-damage wounds. A Las Cannon does D6 damage per wound, which means one Las Cannon can do up to 6 damage, but on average will do either 3 or 4 damage. The Las Cannon also has an AP value of -3, so it forces Space Marine vehicles to take a 6-up save, which is really good for you as well. It means your opponent only has a 16% chance of making their saving throw. If you need anti-tank in your army, Las Cannons are the way to go, but remember to only put them on units that don't plan on moving much, because if they do move, you will have a -1 modifier to hit, and you don't want that. You always want to be shooting at maximum efficiency, so only put your heavy weapons on units that don't plan on moving out of terrain or off of an objective. Missile launchers. Missile launchers are the weapons you take if you don't know whether you need anti-tank or anti-infantry, or if you know you need anti-tank or anti-horde. Like the plasma gun, the missile launcher uses 2 different profiles. One of them is a strength 8 shot that has a -2 AP, which is the anti-tank profile. It also does D6 damage per wound. And the other profile is D6 shots at strength 4 with no AP. This is your anti-horde. It's not really good anti-infantry because of the lowest strength and no AP. It's essentially a D6 shot bolt gun profile from 48 inches. So like the bolt gun, it's okay, but there are better guns for anti-infantry. And the Las Cannon is better anti-tank because of the strength 9 -3 AP instead of the strength 8 -2 AP. Missile launchers are still great, but only if you don't know whether you need anti-tank or anti-horde. Because if you know you need anti-tank, you'd take Las Cannons, and if you know you need anti-infantry, you bring plasma guns or something better that I will get to. So you bring them if you really need the anti-horde and anti-tank at the same time. But other than that, you have better options. Heavy bolters. This is my favorite weapon in the game. I love Space Marine Devastators with heavy bolters because they just look so cool. And in this edition, they are actually good. With 3 shots each at 36-inch range, strength 5 with a -1 AP, heavy bolters are pretty decent anti-infantry. They are decently cheap too, so if you're running low on points but need some more anti-infantry, heavy bolters are a great option. But again, like the Las Cannons, they're heavy weapons, so the only equipped units that don't plan on moving much with them, because you don't want that -1 to hit because you moved. Grav Guns. Grav Guns were terrifying in 7th edition and were the go-to weapon for a long time for Space Marines. Now they have been toned down and aren't really used as much since there are now better options with the way the game works. Grav Guns are still good anti-infantry though, and they are really good anti-terminators. They do D3 damage to a model that has a save of 3+ or more, meaning they'll kill Terminators pretty easily. They are 5 points more than heavy bolters, so personally I would still take heavy bolters because you could have more for the same cost. But Grav is still good if you want some anti-infantry, and better if you need some anti-Terminator weapons. Flamers. Flamers are the best anti-horde weapon. They auto-hit D6 times and usually wound on 4s. Like bolt guns, they are good at killing infantry that don't have great saves to begin with, like orcs or guardsmen. The one downside to Flamers is that you have to get within 8 inches of the horde to shoot. And if you happen to flub your rolls and don't do enough damage, the horde is going to mess you up pretty bad being that close. So that about covers it for the weapons you can take on your infantry. But there is one last weapon I want to talk about, and that is a weapon you can only equip on your Space Marine tanks. Twin Assault Cannons. Probably the best anti-infantry gun the Space Marines have access to. It is debatable, but personally I think the Assault Cannons are pretty good. Strength 7 with -1 to their AP means they would wound most infantry in the game on 3s, and -1 to the saves, meaning you should kill much more with Assault Cannon than you would with regular bolters. They are twice as much as twin heavy bolters, but shoot twice as many shots, with shooting 12 shots at a 24-inch range. Combine this with the rerolls from a Chapter Master or Guilliman, and you can murder whole squads of infantry with one Twin Assault Cannon. And that's where I'm going to stop the list. I know there are a lot more ranged weapons that you have access to in the Imperium, but after watching this video, you probably understand enough to be able to determine for yourself what kind of a weapon they are and what their intended uses for. If they have a high strength with a good AP and at least D3 or D6 damage, then they are good at killing tanks and monsters. If the gun has a medium strength with low or high AP but lots of shots, then it is anti-infantry. Quick examples would be a battle cannon, which would be anti-tank because of its strength 8 minus 3 AP with D6 damage for each wound, and a Punisher Gatling cannon, which would be anti-infantry, since it's 20 shots at strength 5. Even with no AP, there's so many shots you're most likely going to kill at least 5 guys, especially since your Leman Russes can shoot their top guns twice, meaning you'll get 40 shots. I can see a lot of these being played once the Guard Codex comes out. Also, I know I didn't cover all of the weapons because a lot of them are almost copy and paste with a slight difference, but serve the same purpose. For example, plasma cannons are just plasma guns with more range and more shots. Multi-meltas are just meltas with more range. Twin las cannons are just 2 las cannons. So I didn't include any of this stuff because, again, you should be able to figure out that stuff for yourself now after watching this video. The next video I will do will cover all the melee weapons that the Imperium has to offer. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. I hope I taught you something, and I'll see you in the next video. Happy wargaming!